All right, we are back on Radio Row. We have another special guest. We have Mr. Eric Hipple, former quarterback of the Detroit Lions. Getting together. But that's all right, they can hear you. First of all, man, how's it going?
I couldn't find my helmet.
How's it going today?
It's like all those football nightmares you have. Like, my pads don't fit. Anyway, doing good, man. Doing well. Happy to be down here.
How you like the atmosphere?
You know what? It's great, man. There's a lot of activity going on. The sun's starting to shine, which is fantastic. Being from Michigan, coming down this way is really kind of cool. And a lot of activity.
Before we on the show, we were just talking about Barry, how we just saw him. Give us a little bit about you and Barry.
Oh yeah, before you talking about saw Barry Sanders up there, and you guys kind of huddle around him. And he's first of all, he's a really cool dude, right? And he's also very, I don't want to use the word shy, but very unassuming person. And that's actually how he played as well. I only got the chance to play with him 1 year. That was my last year in the league, was his first year. And but from 95 to 2000, I was also working for the Fox pregame show. I shouldn't have said that, but that's all right. Whatever. I don't know where you're at. Okay. But for Fox pregame show, and so front and center, man, I got to see him from really close up. Got to watch all the film because we'd get prepared for him and stuff. And what a player! For me, he's the all-time, unique running back ever because he could not be tackled one-on-one. It was impossible to tackle him. It just so happens the spread offense that he was playing in was not designed for a small back. It's designed for a big back, and yet he made it work and made it work perfect for him because everybody spread out. They couldn't gang tackle him. Yeah,
we know firsthand, not only because we fans, but we also Chicago Bears fans. So
we
literally know firsthand.
In that case, I do love you guys. I love playing against Chicago. I did, and I got a chance to play against the the Super Bowl Bears, and but I also got a chance to play them before they were the Super Bowl Bears. My first start was on Monday Night Football against Chicago Bears, and 48-17, 4 touchdown passes, 2 runs. I love Chicago back then.
Right. Now, before we get more into your playing career, I definitely want to touch on after the Impact Fund. And can you talk about that? We know you had a tragic situation with your son, with suicide.
Yeah, the way I got involved in mental health was, when I left the game, I didn't know what to do. Like that transition is really big, and there's a lot of attention going to it now for good reasons. But I kind of got lost. But where I really got lost was my son was living with my ex-wife, then living with me, then living with her, then living back with me. So he got lost too, and he died by suicide when he was 15 years old, and it crushed me, and I didn't think I could survive it. In many ways, I didn't until I got to treatment, and I started, for mental health issues, depression and stuff. But what I did is I started asking questions and trying to get as much information as possible. And as I gained that information and knowledge, I was doing work with the University of Michigan Depression Center. I started looking at our own population, our own players. And so we did a survey through the NFLPA on looking at depression rates. But what I saw was every single player had problems with the transition. And so to me, I started locking in on that. And eventually what ended up happening, we started the After the Impact Fund, which is to raise funds to help guys, through transition, re-identify who they are, or in treatment, what can we do? Addiction treatment's one thing, but also mental health treatment is kind of where I was focused at. I have a counterpart that focused in on the other side. But here's the thing. I said, this is our population that I see it in, hard to reach. We wear a uniform. It comes off. Who are you? And I was doing work with the military, doing suicide prevention work in workshops, and I saw the same thing in them. Like high tempo stuff. It's mission oriented, hierarchy of command, support system. And all that stuff, when it's done, it comes off, right. And they're done. And some of them, if it's combat, some of them might be left with some of the head injury, blast wave issues that some of our players have. And so I thought, man, let's start putting them together. And so in treatment, we started putting the guys together, and the response was they really interacted really, really well. In fact, we, and part of the After Impact speaker series where we're talking about these issues, we have a Navy SEAL named Brandon Mineth that talks with us, and also even a former president of Dow Chemical, which was, this is, he was global senior vice president of global affairs, right? Mm-hmm. For a $60 to $80 billion company, right? And when he left, he went through transition. So it's really cool to bring this stuff up and forward, and get involvement. But a lot of it is geared towards, helping veterans out, because we can get some funding for our guys, right? But those guys, a lot of them really struggle. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's a common theme that we're hearing is veterans. Veterans, which we have one on our team. So we definitely understand that, and our heart definitely goes out to that part. Now, can you talk a little bit about your website?
Yeah. Well, so I do a lot of speaking. A lot of it is it's a blend between some of it's mental health, some of it is transitional issues that kind of blend to that. But a lot of it is also on mental fitness, because if we talk about mental health itself, and it's called Eric Hipple Speaks, .com is where you can go on there and look and book me. But I do different things like workshops. I also work with business. But the whole thing is, we talk about our own transitions. We talk about military. But you know what? People go through transitions all the time, whether it might be a divorce, or whether it might be, drug use in the family, whether it might be abuse, there's a thing called adverse childhood experiences that the difference between having one childhood experience, negative experience that about 60% of the population has gone through, but 4 or more drastically increases, what the behavioral issue is going to be with that person, and illnesses, diabetes, all that stuff is affected by that, right? And so a lot of those traumas that happen, how do we get to them? How do we, change that culture and, that expression, and try and help those that are really in need? And so that's kind of the issues I speak on. But always positive, because resilience to me is a big thing. I almost got broke going through it, and not broken going through it, but I survived on the other end, and I think we can take trauma and turn it into triumph, and that's the magic.
Now, you talk about resiliency, and I think that I call you the toughest man I've ever seen in football. The reason why I call you that, it was a certain hit you were playing Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Tampa Bay. Yeah.
And running to the sideline, and most famous to hit you, the helmet went one way, everything. How did you get up from that? Like, that was...
Well, if I could remember, I'd tell you. Man, that was I was playing Tampa, and that brings up a really good point about this game coming up, because Tampa's defense back that time was just that strong zone stuff. That's what Frisco is going to throw out there, man. And so, and I was a scrambling quarterback, and so I took off running because the guy's not open. I took off running, I'll scramble. Done it in the past. And I hit that wall, man, and instead of just jumping out of bounds, I thought, no big deal. It was a big deal. It knocked my helmet off. The ball went flying the other way. I did a spin. I laid down. I tried to sit up, and I had no idea where I was at. And they put a knee on my chest and pushed me back down to the ground and said, stay down. So anyway, I did it, but back then I went back in 3 plays later.
I was going to say, in this NFL, you would be out for 3 weeks. Easily that you're out for 3 weeks.
And Scott Brantley, the linebacker who hit me, I think he got a bonus for knocking out a quarterback, because they did that kind of thing back then. Today, he would have been fined and probably, kicked out of the game.
Probably suspended, right? Yeah. What is one of your favorite memories playing in the NFL?
I've got quite a few. I see personally. Great memory, of course, was my first start on Monday night against Chicago. Sorry, but it was. I ended up throwing like a 94-yard touchdown pass and that whole thing. And for me, standing in our end zone, watching Leonard Thompson, our wide receiver, cross the end zone and touchdown, and listen to 80,000 people screaming, and right there I realized I made it. I can play in this league, and that in itself just had chills all over it. One other one was Jack Lambert. I'm going old school now. Mm-hmm. Jack Lambert, when I was growing up, I watched the Super Bowls. He was like, he's tough. I love him, linebacker, blah, blah. I got a chance to play against him. It was my second year in the league. Thanksgiving game, so everybody's watching this thing. I go, this is so cool. I'm playing against Jack Lambert, because that's what I thought, right? And so towards the end of the game, we were beating him pretty bad. And towards the end of the game, so I'm underneath the center calling signals. Set, 2, and all of a sudden Jack goes, hey, Eric. And I just stopped. I look at him, and it's like time just all of a sudden. I go, huh? And he goes, what are you going to do? You're going to run the ball out? You're going to sit on it? What are you going to do? And I go, yeah, we're just going to run it out. And he goes, okay, thanks. And just sit back, and I went, Jack's talking to me. Hot. But it was like time just froze for a second. It's like just me and Jack are talking, man. It was like, it was really cool. You take one of your heroes, and all of a sudden you get a chance to be against him on the field. It's really cool.
Now, you talk about the Bears. You played against the Bears. You had a great moment against us, your first, that Monday night. But playing against that 84 to 85, 86 defense, did you hate playing against them? Was it the night before you was like, oh my God, they on the schedule next week? Or how was it?
Well, I went from loving to play against them, like when we win, to oh my God, that defense in itself was so. Not only the scheme, but their athletes. Oh my gosh, man! The guys that they had up there, Hampton, Michaels, Dan Hampton, right? Singletary. I mean, all of them. They were all great. Wilbur Marshall, right? The hardest hit I've ever been hit by anybody in the league was by Wilbur Marshall. And even though that hit that you're talking about looked really, really bad, this thing, it was that defense, right? And so I slid everybody over. The whole line slide left, and I told my back to go to left to protect my weak side, so that way I can at least concentrate on one side of the field. I went back, and as I dropped back, I see my back on the wrong side, and all of a sudden I realized I'm not protected. And before I could get out of my mouth, before I could get it, I go bam! He hit me, dead run off the end, dead sprint, lowered his head, and hit me right in the middle of the back, and it felt like somebody jammed a sword through me. And so I fumbled the ball. They picked it up. They ran for a touchdown, and I'm laying. I still can't breathe. I'm laying on the 50-yard line. I can hear people, and I'm looking up, turning like blue, whatever. And our coach runs over, and he looks at me, and goes, "We'll block it better next time." I'm going, "There ain't gonna be next time."
Right.
But he ended up fracturing a vertebrae. That showed up in X-rays a couple years later. Yeah. So
when you look at today's game, are there any quarterbacks that you look at and like, or not just quarterbacks, just players overall?
In today's game, there's. It's really strange because you've got the Brady, for example, the perfect drop back quarterback. Can tell you apart. There's not a defense you can run in front of him that he cannot recognize and know what to do and where to go with the ball. But it means you have to have that line blocking that's perfect, right? And a system that everybody knows what they're doing on. And so him and Edelman, they've done it for so long. They don't. I don't think they draw things up anymore. They just go out there because I know where you're going. So you have that to what Mahomes is. Mahomes can do it all. Great athlete, the strong arm. I mean, but he buys a lot of his own time. He can move around, and he feels confident enough to be able to do that because of his athleticism. But it also means that if I'm third and long, third and 8, third and whatever it might be, and they play man defense to try and shut down my passing game, right? I can scramble for 15, 20 yards. All right, and so he buys himself a lot of advantage by being able to do that. Keep the drive going. Now you frustrate the defense. I just think against Frisco it's going to be really hard to do because they're going to play that zone behind there, and it's going to be hard for him to do that piece of it. But that's the dichotomy between the two athletes in my mind. I will say this: Mahomes is intelligent. He might buy a lot of his time, but he's also he's not afraid. He's not skitterish. He's not making bad decisions, and so. To me, he's like the guy. He's what the whole thing singles around, in my mind, in the future of what a quarterback is going to be in this league.
Now, we've seen rare I guess, instances where we saw Brett Favre being replaced by Aaron Rodgers and so on. You had the chance to play with a great in Billy Sims and then Barry Sanders, even though it was 1 year, but Barry Sanders. Talk about that dynamic.
Well, so I came in, so I was on the same draft that Billy Sims was in. And so being a teammate and watch him do it, he was just one of those guys. He was the team. I will say that. His heart and soul was the team. It's always positive yards. He fought, give the ball 35 times a game, and he just got better. So that's what type of that guy he was. And then we had a small gap after his knee injury. We had a small gap. And so we had a few running backs that came in and didn't do so well. In fact, one got my ankle broken, so I'm not really happy with him, but that's okay. Gary James was his name, by the way. But anyway, and then we had Barry Sanders came in. And Barry Sanders, as I said, was just that guy, very unassuming, didn't seem like he had all the super passion in it like what Billy Sims did. I don't think he was the team leader that Billy Sims was. You know what I mean? He just did it all, because he could do it. And it was magic, right? And so I think that's the difference. Just the difference between one guy could get you 20 yards and then lose 10 yards, and they could get you 50 yards and then lose 10 yards. And Billy Sims just was a drive you could go like 80 yards down the field with.
Absolutely. We see the way the game is played now. They protect the quarterback. It's more of a passing game.
Don't get me started, man.
I was going to say, how do you think you would fare in this league, or how much different would it be? Would you say?
It's hard to say because I came in an era where quarterbacks had to be tough because you got knocked down a lot, and you had to survive, and so you got beat up, and but it also meant that you can't throw the ball as much because you really couldn't throw the ball away, and so that means if you've got the ball back there and they're playing good tough coverage, you're forcing the ball downfield to try and survive, or you take a sack, and so you had to have a running game. You had to have a running game in order to be successful in that. So 50-50 was a good balance to try to have. In today's league, you could be a quarterback that can throw almost every down, and positive things are going to happen. But the guys today are much better athletes. They're faster. It's a 24/7, 365 job that these guys, and the money that's involved, they're just different athletes. I go and watch on the field, and I look at these guys warm, and I go, oh my gosh, it's like for me to walk on that field today would be a disaster. Okay. But in the same token, I don't know, because if they can't hit you, maybe I could sit back and go, okay, well, I don't have to throw the ball downfield this way. I've got a little bit more time. If I don't, I throw the ball away, no big deal. So that pressure is different, completely different.
Well, there you have it, Mr. Eric Hipple, former Detroit Lions quarterback. Appreciate you, man. Where can we follow? Find you?
Aftertheimpact.org. So aftertheimpact.org, and of course my site you propped up, erichipplespeaks.com. But I would love for somebody to go on our site and look at aftertheimpact.org. Maybe donate some money if that's the case too for our veterans and try and get them some more help. But other than that, man, I'm all over the place, and I love it. I love going out and speaking and trying to help people.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Make sure you stay tuned to the 3-Point Conversion. We will be back on Radio Row.